All right, so for Chapter 2, we're going to talk about displaying and describing categorical data. So piggybacking on Chapter 1, categorical data is just like a label, right? It's not quantifiable, right, or quantitative data. It's just labeling things. So 3 rules of data analysis won't be difficult to remember. 1, make a picture. Things may be revealed that are not obvious in the raw data. These will be things to think about. 2, make a picture. No mistake there. Important features of patterns in the data will show up. All right. You may also see things that you did not expect. 3, rule 3, make a picture. The best way to tell others about your data is a well-chosen picture. So here we have some data. We compiled the data by counting the number of data values in each category of interest. We can organize these counts into a frequency table, which records the totals and the category names. So this is a frequency table because the first class is 325 in the first class, 285 in the second class, 706 in the third, and the crew is 885. Okay, so first, second, third crew. A relative frequency table is similar, but it just gives the percentages. Instead of counts, it's the percentage. And I believe that's of the total in this particular case, right? So I think if you add them all up and get the total number of the first class, in other words, if you add 325 plus 285 plus 706 plus 885, 14.77% are the first class, okay? So frequency tables, basically both types of tables, frequency, whether it's the percentage, right, whether it's a frequency table like this or a relative frequency table, both types of tables show how cases are distributed across the categories. They describe the distribution of the categorical variable because they name the possible categories and tell how frequently each occurs. So relative, it relates to the whole. So it's shown as a percentage, right? So a relative frequency is just a fancy name for percent. But the reason they use the word relative is that the percentage is relative to the whole. What's wrong with this picture? Well, you might think that it's a good way to show the Titanic data. Oh, I guess this data is the number of people on the Titanic. But what's wrong with this picture?
It looks like the size of the Titanic.
Yeah, so they have a ship that's bigger than, the crew was 885 people, which is more than third class. First class was the small number. Second class was the smallest number. But it's not a great picture. So the ship display makes it look like most of the people on the Titanic were crew members, with a few passengers along for the ride. When we look at each ship, we can see that the area taken up by the ship instead of the length of the ship. The ship display violates an area principle. In other words, when I look at this picture, I can't tell, I could tell the relativeness of it, sort of, but it's very misleading. If I just look at the picture, it's way, way bigger than the second class. The area occupied by the part of the graph should correspond to the size of its value it represents. Now, a bar chart displays the distribution of the categorical variable, showing the counts for each category next to each other for easy comparison. This is a lot easier to see the total numbers and the relativeness to each other. The bar chart stays true to the area principle. Sorry. The bars are usually spaced apart to make the graph more readable. Okay. So I can see second class was the lowest one where the crew was the highest one. But I can also see that first, second, and third class passengers were way more than the crew if I just think for a second. I can't make that distinction with this graph. Okay. So now a relative frequency bar chart is the same thing, except now we're comparing the percentages. So basically it's the same chart, except the y-axis changes from the total number of people to the percentage. Okay. A relative frequency bar chart also stays true to the area principle, replacing the counts of the percentages of the ship data, where I said replacing counts with the percentages. Doesn't look really any different when you think about it, except for the y-axis. So if you're interested in parts to the whole, then a pie chart would work better. Okay, pie charts show the whole group. This is very similar, right? And the slice of the circle into the pizzas shows the percentage or proportion or fraction, however you want to put it. Remember, a fraction, the numerator is the part, the denominator is the whole. Proportion is the same thing relative to another number. And then the bigger slice means a bigger proportion. Okay. Now you could also do the same thing with like a relative frequency by replacing the counts with actual percentages. The pie chart would be exactly the same. Contingency tables. Now this is a big one, especially this is a big one. So a contingency table allows us to look at two categorical variables together. It shows how individuals are distributed along each variable contingent on the value of the other variable. In this example, we can examine the class of ticket and whether a person survived the Titanic. So among the 325 first class passengers, 203 were alive after the crash, and 122 unfortunately passed away. When you look at second class, notice that that's considerably different, right? You have 118 people alive, but 167 people unfortunately passed away. So the first class ticket holders, they had a higher percentage survive than the second class. Now, this is kind of sad. The third class is almost 5 times more people passed away than survived. And then the crew members, 3 times the number of crew members passed away than survived. The total number of people that passed away were twice as many as the survivors. Okay. So then the margins of the table, both on the right and on the bottom, give totals and the frequency distributions for each of the variables. Okay. So each frequency distribution is called a marginal distribution of its respective variable. So the marginal distribution for survival is 711 alive, 1490 passed away. So each cell in the table gives a count for the combination of the two variables. So there were 673 crew members that passed away. Look at this is not funny at all. I thought it said that 673 members sunk. That's not cool. A conditional distribution shows the distribution of one variable for just the individuals who satisfied some condition on another variable. So the following is a conditional distribution of ticket class conditional to having survived. So it's the same thing. 28.6% of the first class members survived. 16.6 of the second class members survived. Relative to the total. So there were 711 people that survived, right? And then 28.6% of those people were first class. So you see in this particular arrangement of data that the first class members and the crew members had a higher percentage of surviving. Second class ticket holders had the lowest percentage. Okay, so if you add up all those percentages, it should equal 100%. In other words, if I add 203 plus 118 plus 178 plus 212, it equals 711. So then the following is a conditional distribution of ticket class, conditional having unfortunately pass away. So then here, the first class was the lowest percentage that passed away. Think about that for a second, okay? Same situation, just representing a different variable. So then the conditional distribution tells us that there is a difference in class for those who survived and those who perished. All right? It is better shown in pie charts of the two distributions. So in green, we have the first class citizens. Look at that pie chart. That first pie chart tells you who survived. Green, purple, and I don't know what you would call that, yellow, beige, right? Orange. But what we notice in whether it's alive or dead, that light pink color, mauve, whatever you want to call that, which represents the second class, they had the smallest percentage alive and they had the smallest percentage dead. And if we go back and look at the data, they had the smallest percentage of total passengers. It's okay.
No, yeah, you know
What?
what? Oh, colorblind.
Huh? Oh, you're colorblind?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Look at the size, though, right?
Yeah, that's what I was. It's only the two, like
The red and green.
the green and peach or something.
Yeah.
Those two, they just come together, and I don't know which. I'm thinking.
I'll keep that in mind when I make your test. Okay.
Thanks, man.
I'll label this stuff. All right. So, anyways, conditional distributions. We see that the distribution of class for the survivors is different than that of the non-survivors. This leads us to believe that class and the survival are associated, that they are not independent. The variables that would be considered independent when the distribution of one variable in the contingency table is the same for all categories of the other table. So if they all had a similar percentage, we would say it doesn't matter. In other words, if 25% of the survivors, if I look back here and all of these said 25%, then I would say, yeah, these are independent variables. It doesn't matter what class ticket you had. They all had an equal opportunity to survive because 25% of them survived. Right. But that's not the case. So we couldn't say those are independent. So a segmented pie chart, bar chart, not pie chart, bar chart shows us, it shows us the relativeness, but in other words, I could look and see, it's almost like a pie chart, but it's a bar. You could see the difference between how many, this is nice because I could see that the alive green representing the first class, this top little section right here, this right here, is much larger, 3 times larger than this. So visually, remember the first 3 rules were what? Make a picture, make a picture, make a picture. By looking at this, within a matter of seconds, I could see that if you were first class, you were 3 more times likely to survive on the Titanic than the other ticket holders. Now the second class, it's very similar in the area. In other words, this box is almost the same size as this box. In third class, there were a few more people that passed away than survived. And then for the crew, a few more people that passed away than alive. So here it's very clear that the first class citizens had a 3 times more likely chance to survive than to pass. Okay? So you could see that instantly in the photo, in the picture, right? What were the 3 rules? Make a picture, make a picture, and what was the last one? Make a picture. So note that using percentages is crucial. It allows us to compare groups of different sample sizes. All right? So don't violate the area principle. While some people might think that a pie chart on the left is better, it's harder to compare the fractions of the whole. In other words, this 2-dimensional chart really shows clearer what the percentage with regards to the whole, as opposed to this. Because here I can't really distinguish between this size and this size. I can't really distinguish between this size and this size. In other words, the yellow looks like the purple and the mauve looks like the green. But on this one, it's very clear what the ratios are. Keep it honest. Make sure that your display shows what it says. So in this one, they have the use of marijuana and the use of alcohol, and then they have heavy drinking. Heavy drinking of what? Alcohol. See how this is a little bit misleading? This plot of the percentage of high school students who engage in specific dangerous behaviors has a problem. Okay? Don't confuse similar sounding percentages. Pay particular. I guess what you're saying is there an overlap between these two percentages? Okay? Clearly, the having drinking is what? They're not drinking milk. It's alcohol. So is it 80% of these kids are drinking alcohol? Yeah. Is there an overlap? In other words, this is a little misleading. Okay? You can't tell by the graph. You'd have to ask more questions or look at the raw data. Don't confuse the similar sounding percentages. Pay particular attention to the wording of the context. What percentage of the seniors are males? What percentage of the males are seniors? Those are two different things. Completely. Don't forget to look at the variables separating them too. Separately. Not separating, separately too. Examine the marginal distribution since it is important to know how many cases are in each category. Don't overstate your case. Don't claim something that you can't. The truth is you're just collecting data and representing the data in a way that makes it simpler and easier to understand, but you can't imply anything, right? I mean, you can, but you don't have to. When we look at the Titanic data, it appears that more people that had a first-class ticket survived. Do we know why? Did they pay some people off? Maybe. Who knows? We just know that a higher percentage of the first-class ticket holders survived, more so than any of the other ticket holders. So I can't overstate that. I just look at the facts, look at the data. Don't use unfair or silly averages. This could lead to Simpson's paradox. So be careful when you average one variable across different levels of the second variable. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that paradox in a second. So what do we learn? We learned that we can summarize categorical data by counting the number of cases in each category, and we can express them as counts or as percentages. We can display the distribution in a bar chart or a pie chart, and we can examine two-way tables called contingency tables, examining marginal and or conditional distributions of variables. For the AP exam, here's a quick tip. Labels and scales on all graphs are required for full credit. So we'll talk about that when you go to, we've mentioned this, when you go to do a constructed response question and they ask you to draw a graph, you have to label everything. If you don't label it, they dock you a point. Okay? And it has to be drawn to scale. So if you just sketch something and it's not quite to scale, they could dock you a point on that. So that question might be worth 12 points and you lose 2 points because you didn't put the scale and you didn't label it. And we'll talk more about that when we start working on test questions. Also, checking for independence is a very important idea in this course. We'll talk about that again in chapter 14 and 25. Independence is usually an even distribution of probability. In that Titanic, if it was 25% survival rate, then we can think of those as being independent. But because first class clearly had a much higher survival rate, it wasn't necessarily independent. There was something at play. Some parameter had an influence on those numbers. Okay? Segmented bar graphs are powerful, but only when the categories add up to a meaningful total. So percentages are great for the segmented bar graphs because you could compare percentage to percentage. All right. Take a look at the 2010 AP exam problem number 6. We'll look at it in a second. Okay? There are many different correct graphs for this problem. How many can you make? This will be in your textbook. Okay? Any questions? All right.